Hello and welcome to the SoundStage audiophile podcast. In this second season of the show, host Jorden Guth is joined by a new guest each episode who knows something about hi-fi that Jorden doesn't. And who knows, while he's learning about all of this, you might learn something too. So with no further ado, here's Jorden and this week's guest.
Hello and welcome to the SoundStage audiophile podcast. Today we're here with Jason Thorpe, senior editor of SoundStage Ultra, responsible for the bi-monthly For the Record column, as well as monthly editorials and reviews, as well as SoundStage founder, Doug Schneider. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much, Jorden.
Hello, Jorden.
So today I wanted to do a slightly different podcast episode and talk a little bit about something that you guys both experienced, the audio show world. You guys both came back from the audio video show in Warsaw, Poland earlier this week, I think. And I want to ask you guys a couple questions about the show and why this show and kind of your experience there. So I guess to start, the first question I have is, what is the Warsaw audio video show?
So it's a audio show and video, obviously, so home theater, that's been going on now 25 years. It started and is still run by Adam, and his last name starts with an M. It's a Polish last name, and I can never pronounce it. I can spell it, so we'll just call him Adam. He started when he was very young because he still looks quite young, and it's 25 years old, and I've been going there since 2016. And the interesting thing about that was the world didn't know about this show. And I guess he had been trying to get a hold of me all year and a number of other journalists, and I was just ignoring his emails. He wanted us to come to the show. And Fiore Capoletto from Sonus Faber said, "Why are you ignoring Adam's emails?" And I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like, keeps emailing me. He's like, "It's a serious show. You got to see this show." And so I finally said, "Okay, I'll just answer." And he said, "I want you to come see the show." And he had invited about 9 other people, I think, that year. He wanted to make it international. And we went and we were blown away. Here was this huge audio show established at that point for 18, 19 years at 3 locations: the Warsaw Narodowy Stadium, the Radisson Sobieski Hotel, and also a hotel called Golden Tulip, which we make lots of jokes about the name about. And it was this big show already, and Warsaw itself is this fantastic place that's really on the rise. You see an increase in construction there, tons of shopping and restaurants there, and obviously they're holding a huge hi-fi show that many people consider the second best in Europe, next to Munich, which is probably the best in the world. And Jason started coming with me. What, Jason? When was your first year? So that was 2016 was my first year. When was your first year, Jason?
I think it was 19 or I think it was 19.
19 must have been 19 because then 2021 COVID hit, right? Yep. And then you're back 22 and 23 this year. And it's this fantastic show with its own vibe.
Yeah, it's in what used to be a Soviet bloc city. So you've got this feeling like it's partly back in time with old sort of brutalist looking buildings and sort of retro architecture, and it's contrasted by what's going up now, which is huge skyscrapers and glass buildings and the scent, the smell of money. It's a really nice city with an incredible contrast between old and new.
And an amazing shopping mall that's better than we have in our cities. That's what I'll say too. I know it's in ways bizarre, but it's fantastic to visit, and it's a totally different vibe than any other show.
And the streets are safe and clean. There's no litter anywhere. Some very odd things too. Some people, you don't see any dogs. Nobody's got a dog. I don't know why. But you can go anywhere at any time, late at night. It's safe. It's welcoming. Wonderful city. The city itself is worthwhile just for a visit, show or no show.
Yeah, and Adam told me last year it's one of the safest cities in Europe. And like Jason said, you can go anywhere, anytime at night. Like, I guess you could find trouble if you went looking for it, but you would have to really look for it. It's not going to find you there. It's just a great place to go. It's gray, though. At the time of the show, October, November is when it's usually held. The color palette is like 1,000 shades of gray.
It's what the joke with old movies or any movies that like depict any of the Soviet era cities where they just completely blue wash it, right? It's the blue, gray, silver look.
It looks like that
it's not,
at this time of year.
They're not making it up.
So I guess I'm going to take it back a step. And like, I always hear about Munich. Munich is like the show in the world of hi-fi. Warsaw is one that everyone seems to be talking about as well. Like, what makes it that these two shows are so much leaps and bounds ahead of everything else and people actually care about them? Because there's like a million shows throughout the year.
And there's this thing where I really like going to shows, but not all shows, because a number of shows, more than half of the shows, are a complete waste of time. What probably makes Munich and Warsaw better than almost all the shows are the organizers. They're organized as professionally run shows. This is really rare. We don't see this often in North America or other places. Munich in particular is run by a group, a company, the High End Society. Adam runs this, but he's been running it for 25 years, and he's got a lot of foresight. Bringing 10 people there in 2016 to expose them, 10, I shouldn't say people, just writers, to expose them to the show, shows that he has international foresight. And I've said this many times to other show organizers. It's an international show. He welcomes international press. He welcomes international companies. So what you get is this mix of Polish companies, European companies, and international companies. And I think it comes down to really the organization, who's running it. And Adam in particular, he took us all out, all the press out for dinner one night, Saturday night, at this high-end Lebanese fusion restaurant. And that's rare. I mean, there's a picture on my Facebook page. There's 20 of us at the table, Jason. And that was Adam's doing to make sure everybody felt comfortable there.
And he's so easygoing and so pleasant about it. But you see, as the days go by, the circles are getting deeper under his eyes because he doesn't have a chance to stop moving. And as Doug said, there's a sense of professionalism about it. It's not being run by enthusiasts. Enthusiasts have their own enthusiasm, but I don't think they know business very well.
Interesting.
And Adam seems to.
Is he running this as like as a primary business? Is this his only thing, or is there other avenues?
No, my understanding is his full-time gig is he has an English language school in Warsaw with his wife. That's his full-time thing. But he has been involved in the audio industry for over 25 years and running this show himself for 25 years. So this is one thing he does, but the English language school, from what I understand, is his primary thing. But this doesn't, that weekend, like Jason said, you see him, I see his wife there, they're run ragged making sure. And they get thousands of attendees, and they don't lie about their attendees. I got pictures of people lining up to get in on the opening day at the stadium location, which is the largest location. There are rooms, Jason, we couldn't get into. They were just packed. 40, 50 people in these rooms. You couldn't even, I could just hold my camera up high. So it is a serious show.
Yeah, this year we had some appointments to meet certain people, and on the Saturday at the stadium. And usually, what we do is we go to the stadium on the Fridays because that's it's a work day and it's not as busy. And we sort of made the tactical error of going to the stadium on a Saturday, and it was impenetrable.
Yeah, it's just packed. And I should say, when we say the stadium, what it is Warsaw National Stadium, and they have soccer there and concerts there and everything. And he's done something really inventive, which opened up everybody's eyes. He uses the box suites as the display rooms. So those suites, which are quite large, each one of them, become the display rooms. So it's kind of like walking around a big shopping mall in a way as you go into these suites. And then on the kind of, I don't know if you call it terrace or whatever, the lobby kind of around the suites, there's other displays too, but it's all these box suites turned into audio rooms.
And what's really neat about the box suites is some of them are acoustically treated. Yeah. So it's not like being in an emptied out hotel room that has with walls made out of paper. It's broadcast quality stuff. So some of the stuff in some of the rooms sounds absolutely phenomenal and far better than you usually hear at shows.
Yeah, like
a few years ago about that.
Yeah, a few years ago, Sonus Faber debuted the AIDA 2, a big giant statement speaker there, and we're like, this sounds incredible in this room. And then we found out later that the room that they used is the broadcast room. So it's acoustically treated. It's asymmetrical walls, so you don't get standing waves. It's just a perfect room to demo a product. So not all of them are like that, but there are a number of good rooms there.
When I think of audio shows in general, one of the things that to me would make a good audio show is product releases, like having people actually show off new products that were never seen or anything like that. What makes companies decide, or what do you two feel like makes companies decide to display new products at one show versus another?
This is a big thing, actually. And one of the things, there's the big North American show called Expona, Audio Expo North America, though many people think that the name sounds like some sort of infectious disease, like, I went there and got Expona kind of thing. But anyway, name aside, it happens in April. We've never covered it in the history of SoundStage for one reason. Munich happens a month later. And every company who's got a significant product release waits 1 month till May. So Expona's in April, Munich's in May. And why would they wait for Munich? Because Munich, the world comes to. Now, Poland is far enough away from Munich. So Munich is what everybody revolves around. In the old days, it was CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, that people would announce things in January, but that's basically gone for audio now. So everybody waits to Munich, and then the world kind of revolves around Munich. So very few product releases happen at Expona. A few will happen before that. There's a Florida show in February. There's a Montreal show in March, but these are small regional shows. So what would make people release a product at a show? They'll release it in Munich, and then they'll release it far enough away from Munich. So you do get some new stuff at the Warsaw show, because it's at the end of October or in November. And like I said, Sonus Faber a few years ago released the AIDA 2 there. And you'll see product releases there.
Yeah, the other thing is for timing of these shows. So I've recently subscribed to a calendar that shows me all the audio shows, or maybe not all of them, but a large amount of audio shows that go on in the industry. And literally every weekend of the year seemingly has an audio show somewhere in the world.
Too many to be significant. They can be regional things, but they can't be significant with product releases.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between an enthusiast show and a commercially run show. And again, it's good to have a show in your hometown because you can go there and check stuff out and see some of the local guys. But I think that you're also seeing a lot less of the large manufacturers' presences in these smaller regional shows, and they sort of leave it to their dealers or distributors. But not even the distributors at the regional show. It'd be more a dealer base, right? A dealer would schlep his stuff to the show rather than because like distributors, if there's like half a dozen shows in North America, it's a significant expense to be going to all of them.
Yeah, the shows are not cheap. Like we're talking thousands, tens of thousands of dollars.
Thousands
just to have
for
display.
The tiniest show. Thousands to go at the tiniest show. Tens of thousands at a modest show, and even hundreds of thousands at the largest shows, depending on the size of thing. And this can be, in truth, a complete waste of time for many companies. It all depends. They shouldn't blow everything, but it's nice to see certain companies at the shows. But Jason makes a good distinction. Local enthusiast show, that tends to be most of North America, Expona being the exception. And I always say, if somebody doesn't travel outside of North America, go to Expona. If you don't travel outside of North America. I also like the Florida show. And Bart there is working. He's renamed it to Florida International Audio Expo to make it more welcoming. And it's in February, far enough away from Munich.
And February in Florida, which is sunny and nice.
So that's, I think it started in 2018 or something. And we all went the first year because we're like, what the hell, if the show is lousy, it's February in Florida, it's going to be nice to go outside. And it was. But the show ended up being very good, and they've run it every year except 1 year during COVID. And it's a regional show, I would say, with international aspirations. So that one could come along, and far enough away from Munich. February to May is quite far. And a company could display a new product in Florida and not infringe on Munich.
So, and this just kind of has me think about something else, which is like, what made CES fail? Like, we went to CES in 2016, 2015, maybe, Doug. And like at the time, it was massive, and there was a lot of audio companies there. But even when we were going between the things, between the different rooms, you were saying like, this isn't what it used to be. Like, this is a bad example of a show. Like, what made, in your opinion or your opinions, what made CES fail? And like, what should these other shows do to prevent that?
I think the big downfall was when they sort of split the timing between the CES and the porn show.
That was a biggie.
Because they, they were both running together at the same time. The Adult Entertainment Expo was running at the same time as CES, and then they split the time.
Nobody really liked to talk about it, but you know what? That brought a lot of traffic to the location, you know? And then I think the other thing was, so the Munich show became the Munich show. I can't remember. It used to be in Frankfurt. Then they turned it really professional. I think it was 2008 or something. And they started just this upward trend. Now it comes to, and it kept getting better and better and better. At the same time, CES kept getting more and more and more expensive. And not just the display rooms. So you got this Munich show coming up, getting costlier and costlier. You got CES coming up, getting costlier all the time. And then Las Vegas itself got costlier. I can remember for the last few years we went, everybody, I'm talking press, exhibitors were complaining about the price of hotels. Like we would stay at the shithole Harrah's on the Strip, an $89 hotel at best. That became during CES a $369 hotel. Okay, so suddenly you went from $400 in hotel costs for a number of days to, a couple grand. And now and then food got more expensive. And everything in and around Vegas got more expensive. And for exhibitors, the shows got more expensive. Then you had the unions around the shows. And this is no joke. The unions would just rip off the exhibitors. They would charge as much to get, you couldn't take the stuff into your display room yourself. You had to hire the show. They would charge literally between payoffs and charges as much to get the stuff up the elevator as companies would pay shipping it to the show.
That is wild.
So it became this insurmountable cost thing. And you've got this really well-run Munich show, and you got CES. And I remember about 2016 was an inflection year. Companies were starting to choose one or the other. And they started choosing Munich. And then it's just CES. More focused, and CES fell off. So it was a culmination of many things, but basically Vegas, CES itself, they just priced themselves out. Now that thing's like a dinosaur of trade shows.
Nobody really goes there for the audio. I mean, for consumer electronics, for the kind of general stuff, I still know that it's pretty popular, but it's almost
pretty popular. It's a dinosaur. It's a throwback to when you didn't have the internet, to when you needed trade publications, when press went there, but does Apple announce anything there?
No, never.
Do big companies announce? No, they just do it themselves. I mean, it's a dinosaur of consumer electronics. It doesn't need to be anymore. So I guess one question that I have then is, and we kind of have been talking about this a little bit, is there, I have a feeling the answer is going to be yes, but is there actually a need for any show? If consumers, hi-fi companies themselves, take it upon themselves to announce products directly, do they need to kind of have it focused around something like Munich or Warsaw? Like, what's the benefit? There is some, okay, and Jason, sorry for jumping in there, Jason, but I will give you, around the same time that CES was becoming more expensive, and you had the Munich show, I saw a couple companies get really wise, because here's also the stupidest thing that happens in Munich each year. The product announcement at 10 a.m. on opening day of the show. 18 companies decide to do a product announcement at that time, right? Come to our room at 10 a.m. on the opening day of the show and see our new product. Well, you can't go to 18 rooms at 10 a.m. And a number of companies realized it costs us a lot to go to these shows. Why don't we announce the product separate from that? And we'll invite press to our announcement somewhere, and it'll cost us less than the show. And a number did that. They bowed out of shows totally. Now, there is still merit, I guess, to going to shows for some companies, and some companies can't do that, but it's kind of a mixed bag. What do you think, Jason?
We were talking about that on Sunday night. It's not so much that they feel they need to go, it's that they can't. They feel that it would be detrimental to miss it and not be seen, rather than going there to show your stuff and people going, wow, this company's here. If they don't go, it's like, well, why aren't they here? And it's, are they but if they are there, are they getting anything useful done? A few thousand people are going to see their stuff. Would the money be better spent on internet promotion, radio ads somewhere? I guess we don't do TV ads anymore. That's the way gone.
Kind of on the internet, but no. But I'll tell you this. I'll bring up something, and then Jason brought up something the last few shows. But if a company, and if a company's listening out there, if you've blown your entire marketing budget on one show, the whole year at one show, you've just wasted your money. That weekend's over. And you know what? A lot of companies do that. Tiny companies, the whole marketing budget is gone in that one weekend, even at Munich or something. And then they're like, well, we can't do anything all year. If you're going to do a show, the show is one thing of many things.
Yeah,
that's what it should be.
Going.
You got to keep it going. And Jason, talk about the sad sights at all these shows.
Oh, it's so sad. It's that nobody wants to kick a puppy, right? So at these shows, you're walking through the hallways, and a lot of times you see in some of the smaller rooms, you see these people standing there looking really desperate, and you just know they haven't told their wife that they mortgaged the house to pay for this new product,
sold off the college fund or something.
Yeah, used it all up, and you can almost. If you're a fresh showgoer and you haven't been to too many shows, you might not notice it. But when you're the press, you could feel this pressure, right? And so a lot of times when I'm walking around, I turn my badge the other way so nobody can see that I'm press. Because you walk in there and they see your press, and you can just see this look of desperation on their faces, knowing that maybe this will change things, having some form of coverage. So Doug is a little bit more immune to it than I am. He's a little bit harder than I am, but I just feel so sad for some of these people.
You feel guilty. That's good.
Well, guilty.
It's not that I don't, but I do try to give companies advice too. Like, this shouldn't be your only thing,
And you can't take every dog home from the pound, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You have to choose which one you're going to adopt. So you can't give all these guys press. And in a lot of cases, there's no value in giving it to them because the product, you just know they're not going to be there the next year. Because you look at this thing and you go, that you have no hope.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the strategy would be potentially companies announce a product beforehand, and they use the shows as almost like an on-hands experience for the press and for people about their already launched product.
Yeah, because that's the bigger companies.
Yeah. Because I can imagine, like, I kind of am victim to this as well with CES and NAB, which is like a broadcaster, nerdy camera stuff. But there's so much noise around those events. Because there's the event itself, and then, Doug, you mentioned it, like everyone wants to announce their products and everyone does it at the exact same time. You just get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, we gave that advice. One big company out of Europe didn't realize it, and I'm sure they'll change next year. They said, everybody missed this one product announcement we had. And we're like, we missed a million product announcements people had. You got to announce. The show should never be the announcement date, ever. Yeah. You're at the show. Announce it outside of the show, and then the show is where I better check that out. If you announce it on a Saturday at the show and you miss your email and stuff, you're going to go right by it. And the shows are a relic from, in a ways, years gone by. I mean, let's face it, everybody's on the internet. It's all electronic. People don't read magazines. And
something the size of Warsaw or the size of Munich, I don't care how many people you take there, you're never going to see it all. So you've got to pick and choose. You got to say, okay, you got to look in advance, say, okay, maybe I'll check this out. Maybe I'll check this out. And then when you're there, you do some quick scans of the different rooms, hoping to find something unique that nobody's seen before or that's exceptional that you might have missed, but you got no hope. We took an extra guy this year. Last few years.
Bonaccio. We shouldn't leave out that Matt Bonaccio was there for his first show and did a great job.
He's good. He's a fun guy. He's young, can take a joke at his expense, which is important.
Especially when you travel with us.
So, a couple old guys, old crusty guys who got nothing better to do than pick on the new guy. But you can't see it all. Like even with three guys, Doug, how many people did we used to take to CES?
We had 6 or 7 sometimes, which was
wild.
Obscene. And you realize, geez, with that many, we still can't see everything. So why are we even trying to cover everything? And right now, by the way, we are cutting our shows way, way down. In the first half of next year, Jonathan will go to the Bristol show in England because he's there. We'll go to the Florida show and we'll go to the Munich show, and that's it. For the first half of the year, we'll go to the Warsaw show again at the end of the year, and then that might be it. We're going to be traveling to companies in Jordan. You're going to be traveling with us to those companies because it's much more efficient than the shows. So the shows are great, certain shows, but not all shows, and you got to pick and choose.
When I'm kind of thinking about this and what I'm hearing, shows might still be beneficial, of course, to like consumers if you're in the market for, let's say, a different system or a piece of a system, and you want to audition a whole bunch of different companies, if it's nearby, or if you have the means to travel and you don't mind taking a little vacation, you can go and audition a whole bunch of stuff. Or for the dealers that are looking to potentially pick up new brands or to get a product range that they might not have in a particular market. Would that be fair?
Yes, and I'll tell you, just on the latter, that's particularly what Warsaw is good for. Maybe we should talk about this, but you'll see stuff there you don't see anywhere else in the world. Eastern European brands, Polish brands, Fez Audio is a good example. Years ago, it was like a nothing. Now it's coming to North America. And so it's a great place to discover on the professional side.
Because the Eastern Bloc, especially that sort of those Eastern countries, I think there's still a tube on the MiG fighter jet. I think they still have a tube in there.
Yeah.
There's a huge history of tube manufacturing in Czechoslovakia, in Russia. They know more that tubes are a part of seem like they're a part of their identity. So you see so much cool tube gear that you would never see anywhere else in the world. Small companies, but they're making some incredibly professional looking product. And yeah, you don't see anything like this anywhere else.
And that's where those companies can really benefit from a show like Fez Audio, because I don't think we would have discovered them if it wasn't for the Warsaw show.
Yep. And Jorden, just to go back to your comment about if auditioning product, if you're a consumer, it's not really the best environment. The sound quality in a lot of the rooms is terrible because and it's packed with people, so it's very hard to get a good seat. You're oftentimes at the mercy of some absolutely atrocious music, which I think we should talk a little bit more about. But I think it's more important to, let's say you've got your eyes set on a particular brand. You can go there, you can sort of touch the gear, you can look at it, but you can't really listen to it very well. And also the rooms are terrible, have terrible sound quality too in a lot of cases.
That's interesting. All right, so we're going to jump into a break right now. After the break, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of some of the products that you guys saw. So for everyone listening, we will be right back. Welcome back to the SoundStage Audiophile podcast. Before the break, we were talking about shows in general and the Warsaw show that Jason and Doug just got back from. Just before we get into kind of more show stuff and audiophile stuff, Jason said something that was super interesting to me. He called out the MiG jets, so the fighter jets from the Soviet Union or Russia, Eastern European countries, using tubes, and that being a big deal. And I am full of these, I'm going to say useless trivia bits. I really like jets. And apparently the reason why the Soviets kept on using the tubes in their fighter jets, in their MiGs and the SUs, was because they were more immune to EMPs, electromagnetic pulses, and other issues that would come about if an actual all-out atomic war broke out.
That's right.
So the jets would actually be able to sustain themselves when all the the North American stuff would likely have just died in the semiconductors and all that stuff.
And you know why that's important to me? Because my system is all tubed and I play records. So in the event of nuclear holocaust, I can still listen to music.
How are you going to get the electricity?
Amazing.
How are you going to get the electricity? You're going to get a generator there out back of the house?
That's a detail I still have to deal with.
As long as you have music, is it really the end of the world?
Yeah, he'll fiddling on the deck of the Titanic as it's going down, listening, playing.
Exactly. Now, just before the break, we were talking about a whole bunch of other random stuff. You did mention that one of the newer writers for SoundStage also came on the trip, Matt Bonaccio.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that experience. He couldn't join us today, but tell me a little bit about that experience from him, from your folks' eyes.
Yeah. So Matt, I got to know him over a year ago, and he lives in Syracuse, and he's a reviewer for us, and he's got a Great Elapsed cartridge review on SoundStage Hi-Fi right now. And all this coverage, when we go to a show, goes on soundstageglobal.com. That's where all of our show coverage goes, and that's where primarily Jason's and Matt's writing from this show goes. But he had never been to an audio show, and he thought it was weird. I went down to Syracuse. I come from a rural part of Canada where driving hours is not a big thing. So I'm like, hey, I'll take you out for dinner. And so I drove down to Syracuse, New York.
Did you go to Dinosaur BBQ, by the way?
No, but you know what? We finally did with him. He actually recommended the last time we did. It's amazing because we were sticking around the big mall there that all the Canadians go to shop, right? Cheesecake Factory. But then he's like, you should go to Dinosaur. And we all went there the last time. We went there because I take my family down there too. But I said, hey, if he thought it was weird that this guy was coming down to just visit him to review. And the guy can write really well. And I said, you should come to a show with us. And he said, oh, I'll think about it. But then earlier this year, he said, I'd be up for a show. And I wanted to do less coverage at this show and do more seeing around and stuff. And I knew Jason was going to be there. And I figured, let's get Jason. He'll be able to hold up most of the coverage because he can do a great job at the show. He's experienced. And he can train up Matt. And it was, years ago about the original Point Break movie, I saw a great quote. It said, it's not a movie, it's an experience. And that is Warsaw. Okay. And I told Matt, you're going to drop in here jet lagged. You're not going to sleep all night, though we slept a few hours on the plane. You're going to have a day to acclimatize, go to the old town, have a beer and burger, which we did. And then you're going to drop in this show and it's going to be mayhem for 3 days. And it was. We finished the show we finished the coverage on the last day of the show. We were up in the bar until 2 a.m. Matt was the last article to go online. And it was all done on the Sunday night.
And it was great having him there for a number of reasons. Number one, because like Doug says, he can write. He's an excellent writer, and he sort of managed to do what a lot of people can't, which is write on the fly. You got to sit down. You've got to put an article together about a room or a product, and you got to be able to just chug it out. You
and tell a story. Come in with an angle. In with many people come to shows and say, okay, that was kind of cool. I'm never coming back again. That was way too much work.
Yep.
And he pulled it off, and he wants to come back.
And it was another benefit of having him there was getting to see it from a set of naive eyes. Because you got to see, I've been doing this gig with SoundStage for a long time now, and you go to a show and you have fun, you see all the neat stuff, and you get to play around in a strange city for a day, and it's really cool. But having him there, he'd never been to a show before. He'd never been to Warsaw before. I don't think he's traveled a heck of a lot. It was fun watching him and getting to see his take on things. So that was an unexpected benefit that I really enjoyed.
And he lived through it. He lived through it.
Yeah, he did great.
Well, no, it's pretty. He said to me, there's going to be a bit of a slag on other publications, but he said, "Are we the only ones who did all the coverage while we were here?" And I'm like, "Yep, it looks like it." And that's usually the way it is. When we leave that show, all the coverage is done. It's on soundstageglobal.com.
That's awesome.
Being the first ones to have it up and getting it live and getting it done while you're there it's a real kick in the pants. It's nice to see it there, and in some ways it sort of takes away a little bit of the thunder from the other publications, right? Because they're kind of whenever it's sort of like a day old by the time they get to it. So it's good for us.
No. Now, out of all the stuff, because you guys saw quite a bit, what was the product that each of you were most excited about seeing at the show? And then what was your product that you saw it and you were least enthusiastic about?
As far as my favorite product there, I'm going to have to be a little biased. I own a pair of Estalon speakers. I've reviewed a couple of different pairs of them. And there's a few things. The sound of them really speaks to me. It's a beautiful, rich, engaging, warm sound. And they paired up with Accuphase for the second time, which is a beautiful Japanese high-end solid-state product, amplifiers, preamps, DACs, transports, all that kind of stuff. And the two products seem to work so incredibly well together.
Crystal Cable Siltec was in there too, right? It was all through their distributor.
Yep, that's right. And that room, it had a sense of realism, and it didn't sound like hi-fi. It didn't sound like you're listening to a stereo. It felt like there was just warm music, just sort of like floating honey coming through the room. It was just wonderful. And again, it's nothing new. It's nothing outrageous. It's just a really beautiful experience to sit through their music.
Well, it was quite pricey. Let's not pretend it was cheap. That was their statement level stuff, right? So it is kind of outrageous in terms of price. But in high-end audio terms, it wasn't outrageous in terms of
new technology or anything like that.
Crazy.
But you are right. You're right. And seeing this all the time and getting to review this stuff does make me sort of forget just how horrifically expensive some of these products can be. So
he forgets a couple zeros, you know?
Yeah.
There is a couple more zeros on there.
Yeah. So that was I think my favorite room there. My least favorite, unfortunately, and I don't think it's nothing to do with the actual products themselves. I think it was more of a setup issue, but the Audio Note Kondo room, which is Audio Note Japan, which is a storied manufacturer of extremely expensive, extremely high-end tube gear. They were using a set of avant-garde duo speakers, which I've also heard, and they're a hill of fun. Those are really exciting, dynamic, snappy speakers that can suck the air right out of your lungs. They're wonderful speakers. But for some reason, it didn't sound very good. There was some problem. There's definitely some problem with the setup, because I know the sounds of that gear. And the second reason why it wasn't very good is because the presentation was just absolutely dreadful.
And I think something was wrong with the turntable. They were playing Tracy Chapman's debut disc. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like your voice. It's got some Alvin and the Chipmunks going on. And Jason's like, I think it's spinning fast.
It was,
and I'm like, her voice doesn't sound like it should on the album, or it didn't sound like it should.
And all that gear should sound good. That the stuff they were all using in there should have sounded better, but they didn't. And they were playing terrible music. Stuff that just nobody would ever actually play on purpose. So those two things there really left me disappointed. And my coverage on SoundStage Global of this certainly reflects that opinion. I felt a little bit bad about saying that I really didn't like it for a number of reasons, because, like I said, it's good sounding gear. But then again, it's an experience of the show is maybe 30% gear, 30% room, and 30% setup. And I think that they must have done something wrong with the last 30%.
That's too bad.
It is.
Doug, how about you? Favorite and least favorite?
My favorite was probably, it was a product I covered last year and Matt covered this year, because when I go to the shows, I kind of look at them from a bit different point of view, not just what I experienced, but is this product actually going to make it? In other words, is the company going to be able to sell it? And that is a company out of Lithuania called Silent Pound and a speaker called the Challenger. And Dennis and Brent talked about this in a previous podcast episode, because I wrote an article. When I first saw that speaker, I said, it's either special or shite. I wrote an article last year and it seemed pretty darn special. And it was in an advanced prototype form last year. It was a real product and done. And this year they had the final production version. It's using some interesting ideas in terms of the acoustics of the design. Nothing too outlandish, but some different things going on. A dipole bass section, waveguide on the tweeter, cardioid dispersion, all that type of stuff. And for high-end audio, a reasonable price. I think it's something like 15,000 euros per pair, and it's a big floor stander, and it's real tech, and it looks like a finished product, and it sounded really good there. And I didn't lead Matt to it. Matt just came back and said, hey, I got to write about this Silent Pound. It's a strange name for a company. Challenger speaker. And I'm like, go for it. I covered it last year. And truthfully, that was probably my favorite. My least favorite. Was there anything I was crapping all over, Jason, as really bad?
Nothing that stands out.
I will say, too, I should put a runner-up to the favorite. Jason wrote about this room in the coverage, the Wilson Griffin room. Was really good. It had these Sabrina X speakers and a Griffin integrated amp, and they were mixing between CD playback and LP, and that was at the stadium. And I thought, you know what? This is actually a really good system. I could see somebody buying this system. It isn't some giant plywood horns or something. It was a really refined system. But was there something now really bad? There was the Tracy Chapman thing and that audio note thing. That was really kind of off-putting, that somebody should have been able to hear that. And Jason, do you remember? Usually I jump out.
No, we didn't. I don't think we usually belabor the point. We usually talk about this sort of stuff because it's, it does jump out at us. And I don't recall anything else really offending us.
Yeah, no, I can't say there was something really horrifically bad there other than Jason saying, yeah, you better have your turntable spinning at the right speed. Okay.
Yeah,
that's like, let's get it. It's like wiring your speakers out of phase and not noticing. Oh, I guess they're out of phase, right? Like it sounded like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
So, Doug, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that the show was split up into 3 locations. I'm wondering, Jason, Doug, kind of give me a visual walkthrough. So for somebody that hasn't actually been to the physical location, why is there 3 spots? What's the deal? Like, let me experience it through your words.
Sure. There's 3 different locations. There's 2 hotels and the stadium, which we've talked about earlier. The 2 hotels, one of them is the Golden Tulip, and it's the smallest of the 3 locations. They've got maybe 3 or 4. Actually, it's about 5 or 6 ballrooms in there, like sort of conference room type things, and they're generally larger scale installations. You've got the one that I mentioned earlier, one of my favorites, Estalon, was there. They've got a very large room, and they need it because they have very large speakers. There's several different manufacturers of high-end tube gear. There's some horn loudspeakers, but you could see that entire hotel in probably a couple hours. So it's not a physically large installation. So you don't need a lot of time. You can get that done anytime you want. Timing isn't very important. It does get somewhat busy, but it doesn't get absolutely jammed like the stadium does. The second location is where we stay. It's the Radisson Sobieski, and it's a lovely hotel. Radisson, so it's corporate, but something I rave about every year is they have the best breakfast buffet. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. Again, I just pack it in the morning, giant omelet, and lots of fruit, and just keeps you going for most of the day, which is nice. But the hotel itself you're looking at 7 floors of this hotel. The main floor and the second floor are, again, slightly larger installations in sort of like conference rooms. But then you get into the meat of it, which is floors 2 through 7, and they are packed. In a lot of shows, you'll see that they put manufacturers in one room, and then there's an empty room, and then they put the manufacturer in the next room. So every other room has an exhibitor, and that's to sort of have a little bit of buffer for sound. This show, this particular show, pretty much every room had an exhibitor in it. So it seemed like it was larger this year than it has been in years past. Those halls, it's like a COVID super spreader event. If COVID was still a thing, which apparently it's not, I don't know. What do I know? But you're packed in elbow to elbow in this, and it's because there's so many rooms, though, you can still get in and get to see them. Like there's a lot of people, but there's still room to get in there. And these tend to be the smaller exhibitors, like the people that have mortgaged the house. So you have a blend of sort of what looks like somewhat homebrew stuff, like maybe maybe 5 to 10% of that. And then you have established companies in there that are smaller. And then you have some newcomers who have really got some interesting stuff. So it's the most interesting out of the 3 locations. And you can always find something interesting in that hotel. The third location is we've already talked about, which is the stadium, and the exhibitors there tend to be the much larger. You'll see the big corporate like Klipsch, Musical Fidelity, JBL. You'll see the larger companies there, and they're in some pretty large scale rooms.
Yeah,
and
like I mentioned Wilson and Griffin in there, and those tend to be the larger boutique ones. And then Paradigm and Anthem were there
Canadian
from Canada,
folks.
Canadian through their distributor, and you get these kind of heavy hitting companies.
What's also really nice is there's some fairly large retailers of LPs. So in both the stadium and in the Radisson, you've got some. If you want to go vinyl shopping, it's a really good spot to go check that stuff out. And of course, the other neat thing is you're walking through the hallways. Everybody's handing out these little candies, these little cow candies. They're like soft caramels. So it keeps you going through the day. You just end up like in close to diabetic shock by the end of it.
Whatever it takes to get through.
Yeah.
And I should say that the reason he has it at these 3 locations is the show has been sold out since we got there. He can't get any more space. So any additional space he gets might be a room or 2 at the Radisson, that sort of thing. He's had to expand to 3 locations to accommodate the demand that the exhibitors have for the show.
And there's shuttle buses that run between the hotels and the stadium.
Yeah. Hotel, really, Radisson and the stadium.
Well,
Though Uber there's pretty darn cheap, and it's just better to grab the Uber sometimes.
And the 2 hotels are probably about 300-400 meters apart. So it's a quick walk.
Basically across the street. And then
you don't even need a coat.
The stadium's about 3 miles away, right? 3?
Yep.
Yeah, about 3 miles away. Yeah.
Now, this kind of leads me into a slightly different question, but when we're talking about these audio shows, and Jason, you kind of mentioned it, and I think Doug, you kind of said something on this topic as well. The audio tracks that companies use to demo their gear, is there like a set list of audio tracks that all the companies just choose from?
Horrendous ones. Horrendous. What are they? Keith Don't Go, right? Jason, which
that's one.
Yeah.
Hotel California live.
From live. Yeah. There's another one somebody brought up when we were there. Oh, they didn't want to ever hear it again. I can't remember. We were talking about that.
Anything by Diana Krall.
Yeah.
There was a time at one of these shows where I could hear Diana Krall playing from 2 different rooms at the same time.
Same song? Because that would just be
different songs. It was just worse. It was just out of phase, and it was awful.
Diana makes my skin crawl. That's that music, It's like...
So what is it with these companies like choosing these particular tracks? And like, is there any company that just knows how to choose a playlist?
Oh, yeah.
This was Rune Skov from Griffin actually had a wicked playlist of non-audiophile stuff, right? He on vinyl, and he played some Prince, and I can't remember what else he played. He's got it. He understands that you don't play this crap. And I don't mean it. Maybe it's fine for the first 25 times you hear it, but after 1,000 times of Hotel California, the live version, give me a break. And basically what happens is they become like sound effects records. They sound good on anything. So they just put it on their system. Yeah, they put it on their system because it sounds good on anything.
And there's this desire, I think, for manufacturers to make their system sound as good as possible. And some stuff is more demanding than others. Like you'll hear a lot of, like solo flute, like solo violin or classical guitar. And really, how can you? Anything could play it. And you could play it through a Bluetooth speaker, and it would sound decent.
Yeah, and you can see the pained look sometimes when you switch up their thing. So Jason and Matt, I was trying to convince them that Lana Del Rey is really, 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 really good. And Matt was crapping all over her as a fraud. And Jason was like, yeah, whatever. So we're in this one room. It has a point with this. And I said, Jason, you're going to listen to some Lana Del Rey. And you could see the person reluctantly hand over the controller. Okay, cue it up. You know what I mean? Like, and as soon as we were done, right back on their playlist, right?
Yep. And there's I'm a little bit of a button pusher, and sometimes I like to play. If they'll let me, I'll play something, and I'll play something that I like that sounds good, but it's a bit abrasive, and you can just see the room just clear out. And it's a little bit, it's somewhat satisfying in a cruel way, because I like it. It's great music. It's you put on some Rush or some Led Zeppelin, and either the room will clear out or everyone will show up because they're now thrilled to hear something that's actually real music.
But a lot of times, and these things challenge them too. Like, put on You Shook Me All Night Long from Back in Black loud, and see how many systems fall apart when you do that, right? And it's like, they don't want to play it because no, my system can't do that, right?
I love it. So we're getting pretty close to the end here. Jason, you haven't joined us on the Audiophile podcast yet. Doug knows what's coming up for this last question. What I'm going to pose to you, Jason, is if there was a soundtrack to your life, music that you listen to, not to write a review on or anything like that, just to enjoy, what would that soundtrack be? What would that artist be, or the song, or the album, or the playlist?
I'm gonna have to pick two. First, would have to be Rush Moving Pictures, because I'm a frostbitten Canadian boy and I grew up with Rush, and one of the guys, Alex Lifeson, went to my high school.
No way.
Yeah, I kissed my first real girlfriend while Spirit of Radio was playing. A number of things. And I hold Rush close to my heart. So yeah, I'm going to pick Moving Pictures by Rush. That's number one. Number two is would have to be Talk Talk. And that I would pick Laughing Stock and Spirit of Eden as the two records. They post-rock tension mixed with beautiful release of tension. This beautifully recorded stuff. I listen to it every time I review a product. I've got those two albums are always out, and it's an old girlfriend of mine once said it's the best make-out music in the world. And that's good enough for me. I thought it was
Roxy Music Avalon.
No, that's guys think that. So those would have to be my two bands. That would be Talk Talk and Rush, and I'm going to stick with that.
Amazing. Now, Doug, it's been a few months since you've been on. Any new kind of music that would go into the soundtrack of your life? Anything that you want to change up?
I'm still on my Lana Del Rey kick. In fact, I listened to 3 albums on the way home on the plane. But instead, I'm going to switch it up and tell you, I just got a text, literally, as Jason was speaking, from Matt. And this is how important the Warsaw show is. He said, "Hey, Doug, just wanted to thank you again for bringing me to Warsaw. I had a blast, and it was an incredible experience, both in terms of visiting a foreign country and in learning the ropes of reporting on a major trade show. I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to go next year, and with any luck, Munich in the spring." So it came out positive, Jason. See, and I encourage anybody to go to those 2 trade shows. One of the 2 or both if you're going to go. Even if you're from North America, it's worth the trip.
Amazing. With that, I think I'm going to say good day to both of you, and take care, and all the best to everyone out there.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorden.